Hello.
Hey guys.
Hi. Welcome.
Adriana.
Amy.
Juana.
So thanks for coming to our channel, Experienced Wisdom. So a little bit of what we're going to be talking about today is the awakening process and what kind of that is. So we figured Juana can kind of go first as like the timeline kind of goes.
So, first off, what a spiritual awakening is just kind of a higher consciousness. The way we've experienced it, we all, experience it differently, but ultimately it's basically just seeing the world and ourselves in a different perspective on a higher conscious level. So, by my experience, after going through an awakening, I just saw everyone and just everything, the truth of humanity and just other people. Like I could see through their bullshit, kind of, is another way to put it. Like when someone was deceiving me, like I was just able to kind of see it in that type of way. But for my experience personally, before I went through a spiritual awakening, I actually was in a super dark place, and a lot of things were going on in my life at the time, and so it really put me in a dark space to a point where it made me question myself, and just, I was in a space where I was like, who am I? Like in such a depressive state that I was like, I no longer want to be here on earth. I just because, we go through life not experiencing emotion that I would always bottle things up inside, and I was kind of forced, being in my darkness and being in a tough space at that time. I was thrown into this, almost like I would say like the dark night of the soul, just being really in depth and like essentially hitting rock bottom. So I was like, I had hit rock bottom. I lost my job, I lost a relationship, I lost my parents. So like just everything built up at once. I was struggling with mental illness at the time. So like I was just not wanting to go on with life. And and then, I wanted to end my life, and I got to a dark place where that, to the point where I wanted to end my life. And I just, and I just let the emotions out. I had, my mom had passed away at the time, and I wasn't understanding these changes I was going through. I just kind of went through them by myself, and actually my mom spoke to me, and so I thought that at the time that this can't be, like she came to me and she just kind of, in a sense, cradled and held me and was like, I'm here for you, like let it out. Like she kept telling me to let the emotion out, because I would just keep it all in. And finally I did. And then I just felt this huge rush of energy and peace come before me. And I felt at that time, I didn't feel alone. Like I felt like there was a higher source, a higher power, God, right there, leading me through this process. And so as time went by, as I started seeing like the world so different, and I started feeling more, the more I let emotions out, the more I healed. I just, I even, Adriana and Amy actually at some point thought that I was
Going crazy.
I was like to me, my whole life, even as a little kid, I was empathic, so I always carried people's energies, but to me it was just like a normal thing. So when I would speak to them about these things, I just said it like normal, like, well, I didn't know I was going through anything, so I thought, so I was just talking to them about like the way I was feeling and just things like that, and they were both like,
And I think like Willa or Grandma passing away was a huge catalyst for most of us, and so hearing you say those things were a little bit off to us because we don't know if it it's had something to do with that, and it was kind of like a mental health issue where maybe you weren't doing really well and we didn't know how to respond to you with the way that you were being like empathic about things and like becoming more aware of yourself. And so we were just really confused as to what was going on with you. And, so family wise, like personally, it was kind of like strange to see. Mm-hmm. But
even like the language that you're using was like so foreign to me.
Yeah.
Like, what is she talking about?
Yeah. Sure. And like, because again, I struggled with mental illness, really bad depression, and I was very emotionally unstable. I just didn't know how to, I grew up not just to bottle things up inside, and then, so I was really all over the place with my emotions. So, I was on medication due to it. And so they know that, I'm one to like, at the time, they know that I was one to bottle things up, and then when I didn't know how to express the way I felt, and so that's why I'd hold back on my emotions, because I knew that they would come out not in the greatest, time. Like, so I learned to go through, I learned to master my emotions in a sense. I've learned to become more emotionally mature, and I'm very self-aware of myself after having the awakening. And again, I had spoke to them about what I was feeling, and they were just, wow,
confused.
Yeah, like, wow, she needs to
worried,
get back.
I think too.
Right.
Worried.
And I had gotten off my medication, but at that time I was off my medication for a while, and when I did, I was more aware, like, for those of you who are struggling with any type of mental illness, for my experience, I was told I could never get off the medication. I was supposed to, I was told to stay on it because of my being as unstable as I was, so when I slowly got off of it, and I, filtered my body from and I will never ever tell anybody not to take medication and to stop taking their medication. I'm just giving you about like what happened in my experience. So when I did, all the feelings that I hadn't felt for years, because on the medication I was so numb. I was so numb to all my emotions. Like, yeah, it helped, but it also, pulled my emotions back, and was able to. So essentially, I didn't feel emotion.
Because I think too, like how I viewed it too, it was like it helped you maintain your daily life, but when it came to anything personal going on, is when the outburst would happen, or
right.
Stuff like that. That's how like we viewed it a little bit too. So
absolutely. And so when I was off of it, I started feeling all these emotions that I hadn't probably felt. And I think at that time I was on antidepressants probably for 7 years, and so I felt all these emotions come out as I was going through my awakening, and it was like, whoa, it was just like filtering, everything that I had suppressed for so many years. And it was so overwhelming. It was so hard. I didn't even understand what was going on with me. I didn't really have anyone that I could talk to, because when I first talked to them, they were just looking at me like, I don't know, are you crazy? No, they didn't say that, but it was just the look that they gave me, and them not understanding where I was coming from at the time. But you know, the more I worked on myself, you know, I just stuck to myself and just kept healing and working through my emotions and understanding my emotions and all that.
And doing it alone, because, you know, since we didn't really understand what was going on, I'm sure it felt super lonely.
Yeah, like in the physical, it felt really lonely, like nobody could even begin to comprehend or understand what I'm going through. And at the time, I didn't know that there were people around the world going through the same thing. And now I think back and I'm like, I wonder how many people have gone through this process and just didn't understand what they were going through. And so I just, you know, I didn't feel alone when it came to my guides and God on the other side, and my angels, because I always felt that they were there with me all the time, you know. So I didn't feel alone. I didn't feel lonely to that sense, but I just felt lonely being here, like
going through the process of it.
Yes, and not understanding. But I mean, I strongly believe that I was meant to go through this alone, so that, you know, we were all meant to go through this so that other people could understand that they're not alone. You know?
Definitely. And I think too, in that same time frame, I was at a job working, and one of my coworkers kind of introduced me to like some podcasts and stuff about, first it was kind of like the healthy eating and stuff like that, and then I listened to kind of more of a spiritual based podcast, and that's when I started to kind of understand what you were going through, because I remember the conversation that we had, all three of us, and you know, I think the topic was on like empathy, and that you were empathic, and that you were like starting to feel what other people felt, and so then I was kind of going through a huge, you know, like with that also being a catalyst for, you know, after her passing, I went into that dark, I think too, just like the relationship I was in was ending, and I had moved out of an apartment that I basically just was forced into it a little bit, because it was kind of like I had like a little meltdown, and then I think after I kind of started listening to that podcast and understanding what I was kind of going through, and I related and resonated so much with what they were speaking about, and I was like, okay, like this is a huge thing in a sense of like, I'm totally understanding why I'm going through it, why I'm processing the way I'm processing, and things are being taken away from me in that sense. Like I felt like the lowest low. So another like deep, dark night of the soul kind of thing. And so I think you had started to come over, maybe. I think we kind of all went through like it was weird, but like you had left a relationship. I was going through like that whole thing too of like just being on my own again, being independent, finding myself and like what my interests were again. And we started having conversations that were really similar of like the awakening process of like, I saw things so differently, and I started to understand things so differently too, of like, I viewed everybody as just like this child, like I think too, because that was my process of like my inner child. So I started seeing other people as like their inner child. So I just started to think of them as like what happened to them when they were young, like, because I know I went through a lot of things and traumatic things when I was younger, and so I started to view everyone like that, and it was like, oh my god, like I started feeling empathic in that way, and started understanding like, gosh, I don't know what they went through to, you know, for them to feel that certain thing or feel that certain way. So I started to feel more aware in that sense, and then it brought me back to me of like, all the things that I went through and why I felt, you know, like abandoned or alone or whatever it was. And so then we started having a lot of conversations about that, about like our awakening and stuff.
Yes,
so.
definitely.
So you probably felt a lot of relief that I was starting to have, like, because you had brought up a lot of things to me that I was like, oh yeah, I know about that. And I know about this.
Because I was hesitant at first because like I was like, well, she, you know, they didn't understand before. So then when you started speaking to me, I was like,
she does get it.
She went through an awakening.
Yeah.
Like she is definitely understanding exactly, like, and then the feeling, because you can just know, see, that's part of the awakening. You kind of just see who is conscious. Like when you know, you just know, it's just, you just know. There's really no other way to put it, you know?
Yeah. And I think too, I think you were kind of like meant to do it first or go through the process first in a sense, because I feel like I definitely went through it and like was super aware of it all, but at the same time I was so like, this is just like because of all the things that are going on with me, or you know, I literally had a breakdown, you know, and I was like, gosh, why is this being taken away from me? Why do I have to go through all this stuff, like, you know, passing of grandpa, you know, like a huge relationship ending. It was just like so much was going on, and then it was, you know, and then knowing that you were going through it after we had like the actual conversation, and we just like totally got each other after that. I think it was kind of like, okay, you're not alone either, you know, like you are going through it too. And so we kind of,
and it's so weird how it played out too.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden I like moved out of my place in our hometown, and then I moved in with her, and it was like everything just fell into place in such a synchronistic way that we're like, wow, this is probably why I was meant to enter. Because we had, you know, due to my mental illness, I really destroyed a lot of my relationships due to my mental illness, you know. And so like our relationship, you know, it was like slowly we gained each other's trust back, you know.
Yeah.
And then like I went in and moved in with my niece, and we just like, it was just so weird how everything just fell into place. And then as we spoke and got, you know, closer and understanding each other on such a deep level, and then Amy came.
Yeah, and I think that she's so right that you had to be the one to pave the path for us, almost, because I don't think that I would have been able to do it like by myself, or
no,
I really had to be you. It really had to be you.
Yeah.
And
it sucks because you really felt alone through it, and like
It was hard.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I was so grateful to have both of you during my awakening, because if I had questions, if I felt alone, like I could always reach out to either of you, because you guys already, you know, knew about that stuff.
And when her and I were in different conscious levels, like it's not, no one's better than the other. It's just that we just so you know, as we ascend, we, you know, see things clearly. And I remember when you had just gone through your process, and then Adriana and I came to talk to you, and it was like you were still just not there understanding.
I think though too, you had a lot of walls around you where you were like, I get it, but like I can't trust right now.
Yeah.
Right. You go through that process where you're like going through the dark night of the soul. You're in hermit mode. You're contemplating everything that you thought you knew about yourself. And in a matter of like, everything you thought was real about who you are and humanity is just, whoa. Like you just see like a light bulb. You just see everything for what it is. And you're like, holy crap, you know? And you start feeling like you're losing yourself. And it's like, I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know what this is, you know, but it's actually
Yeah.
just you becoming who you were before society and family structure and friends and all that molded you to the person that you felt they wanted you to be.
Yeah.
You know, instead of who you truly are. And slowly you start beginning to question every area of your life. Like,
you realize codependency, you realize a lot of like the trauma that you go through, like PTSD and stuff, that what the things that trigger you are. You realize so much about yourself that you're like, oh my god, like that's why I reacted this way, or this is why I said those things.
And it's like you're taking full responsibility of your part in every relationship you're at, what part you played, and you just have grace for the other people.
Yeah.
Understanding that they too have their own story and they too have pain that they went through.
And that's why after that I was like, okay, I get the empathy of Juan. Like when you were talking about empathy, it was like, I get people can say like, oh, I'm empathic. And for at least back then it was like, okay, what does that mean? Like, are you some kind of like witch, or are you kind of like, you know how people are feeling or whatever? But you really do carry on, like, you know, in relationships, you do feel the other person when they feel certain things and like,
their energy.
Yeah. And it's,
because think of it, if we didn't have our bodies, what are we? We're energy, you know. It's like turn off the lights and speak to another person across the room. You don't need to know what they look like, you just need to know the feeling and how you perceive them. That's energy, you know. Go through your process, Amy. I want to know, I want you to go a little further in your process and how you.
Well, I guess for me, I think a catalyst was COVID, like, just took complete, you know, control over everyone's life, you know? And I think that's when I started to, like, really become hyper aware and self-aware of, like, myself and then others. But I think what really, like, threw me into it was I watched Iyanla Fix My Life. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that. Iyanla Van Zandt. Oh, she's great. So she has a show. It's called Iyanla Fix My Life, and she is just, she calls it a spiritual ministry. But I learned so much about trauma. I learned so much about like healing and all of that. And then that like made me think about like, okay, like reevaluate your own relationships now, Amy. And then I became like hyper, like I was saying, hyper and self-aware of like myself and others. And then like you would always suggest like, hey, listen to this podcast or How to Do the Work, you know, by Nicole, LePera. And that was a big part of it too, is like doing that work. And then I learned all about like the ego and all of that. But I definitely think that I went through a dark night of the soul, like questioning everything and everyone. And I think for a very long time in my life, I felt very like unhappy. And I was always like trying to find things to like fill those voids of unhappiness within myself. And I think when I came out of like the dark night of the soul, I realized like, girl, you're not happy because like you're not happy within yourself, and you have all these things that you have to heal. And so I think that's the biggest thing that I took out of my awakening is like, you need to be enough for yourself. Like you need to.
I think relationships for me were like, I would cling to people because that was like, I wasn't comfortable by myself. I wasn't comfortable, like, it was a huge thing for a while, is like how if anyone was mad at me or upset at me, it would eat me alive, because I never wanted anybody to look at me a certain way, like being sad or angry, or I couldn't show that emotion because I felt like it would portray me to be somebody I wasn't, and I was so self-conscious about that. So I was always very chill, didn't talk about my emotions, didn't talk about a lot of the things that I went through when I was young. So it was very, but then that created so many blocks in my life where I couldn't get past a certain place with people, because it was like I was open until I wasn't.
Right.
And then that's where the like conflicts would start to happen, and I wasn't comfortable enough to open up in that way. So after all of that like awakening process, it kind of forced me into that, because, you know, once I like broke down and, you know, felt all the feelings. It was like, holy crap, like I had all of this inside, like, which makes sense, you know?
Yeah, it required like so much like inner child healing for me.
Yeah.
I had to do like a lot of that inner child work.
Which is so hard because you want so much to just be okay, and nobody wants to dig deep like that. But it requires work within yourself, and part of that is like essentially going backwards. So it's like from the beginning, from wherever like you can remember your trauma, it's like starting over from going back, and then being able to heal that so that now in the present you are able to, you know, go on with your life and be able to live it in peace without a trigger of somebody else saying something and then lashing out. Like, have you ever, like, you see that in people? Like, I remember seeing that, like, where someone will look at another person in a certain way and that person will just yell at them because of the way they were stared at. And it's like that trauma, for someone to allow someone to trigger them to that point, it's like when you do your healing, the way people perceive you, the way they look at you, the way they talk to you, none of that even matters to you because you've done your healing. You love yourself enough to be like, hey, your opinions of me doesn't matter, you know, and you're just coming from a place of hurt and you understand that. Yeah. You're so conscious enough to understand that the way people perceive you and the way, you know, other people react is because they're just coming from a place of pain and they don't really know how to stable their emotions enough to be that way. And so that was my thing, was just lashing out, you know, because I didn't understand the trauma, my trauma. And as you go through it, you understand your childhood trauma, you understand why you do certain things. And that's what part of the awakening and being conscious is just understanding where it all comes from, where it all stems from, why, you know, kind of digging into your shadows, so to speak, like all the emotions that we were meant to feel growing up. We were told being angry is not a good thing. Being jealous is not a good thing. Being envious is not a good thing. It's not if you're doing something to hurt another person. But if you embrace and question, why am I feeling a certain way? Why do I feel jealous? Or why am I angry right now? What is that trigger? Like, you're self-conscious enough to ask yourself those questions and kind of just like sit with those emotions. Be comfortable with those emotions and understand that we all go through those emotions that that are perceived as negative, and that's okay. Just sit with it and understand that, you know, we're all in this together. We all, like, a lot of people are ashamed so much of who they are, they're not able to you know, dig deep like that, because to them it's like having to face themselves like a mirror. But guess what happens? Like, you meet people and they trigger you, and they're gonna keep triggering you until you address what that is. So people will always come into your lives, whether in relationships and things like that. It's part of the process to help you heal in your process. Even if you don't even know what that means, even if you're not doing the healing, you do know when you're triggered. You do know when somebody bothers you, and you're gonna get sent people to keep doing it, and you're gonna keep facing that same cycle until you address it and you heal it to the core, you know.
And it looks different for everyone, you know.
Everybody.
My process is like, I go through it and I'm like in these stages of like, I need to retract, I need to just come back to me and like refocus on what I'm doing and question all my, you know, like choices that I'm making, and then I just kind of fall out of it, you know, and I just go wild again, and I decide, you know, this feels right to me right now, and this feels good, and this, but then, you know, once I feel, and like now that I'm more, I guess you could say, aware and more aware of my feelings, I should say, of I know when I'm getting off track and I need to like come back, you know, and I've I kind of always been that way. Even when I was younger, I would go crazy and drink and do all this stuff, and and then I would be like, whoa, like I gotta really just come back to myself, and I'd get back on track. I'd focus more on the things that I needed to do, and then I would go back again and go crazy. But that was just kind of like the airiness of how I am. But and that's still my process. That's still like, I'll go through like the phase of like, I need to just take care of myself and focus on what my needs are right now, and then I'll kind of fall back into like,
and that's okay. That's part of the process, like it's okay. Like oftentimes we are looked at for doing certain things. Like I always say, make a mistake, go do what you got to do in life, but because that's part of like the process of healing too, like you go through those stages that you say, and that's meant to be there. Like your process is meant to be your process for that reason, because then you can address it, then you can address it to be like, okay, what is it within me that I'm not seeing, or what pattern do I have here? It's meant to question, and without making mistakes in life, without any of that, we're not really growing. We have to go out and make those mistakes. We have to go out and not to say that I'm intentionally gonna go rob something, or but
you tend to find yourself in the same
right.
cycle.
Yes.
Doing the same things that, felt comfortable before, but now are, can lead down to a path of like not feeling good, or, just things like that.
Yeah, that's how you become self-aware, is through your process, So
yeah, and I think sometimes social media can give this false, I don't know what you want to call it, false idea that awakening and healing is like all rainbows and unicorns. And I think it's important to know, like, it's actually not that pretty. And it's really hard, and you have to really commit to like doing the work and the healing.
The work, we'll say that a lot, but what would you say for you the work is?
The work for me is like, if there's anything within me that triggers me, any like feelings that I'm not understanding within myself, the work for me is meditation. Like I go inward, and that's where I connect to the other side, 5D, so to speak. And that's where I speak to my guides, and I speak to our higher power. My parents are very, they're part, they're my guide. They're part of guiding me through this life, and if there's anything that I need to know through the process of my life here, I just meditate and I connect with them that way. That's just the way I do my work for me. I've tried, several things. Like I actually did regression therapy, and that helped me a lot. That helped me connect to the other side. It helped me connect to myself, all the way to the trauma that I endured back to the present moment. And that's the way I did the work, and just feeling it. Mostly that's a huge thing. It's just feeling those uncomfortable emotions. Everybody wants to block those emotions, like block feelings that we don't want to feel, but that actually like it makes things worse. At least for me it does. In my experience, it made it worse for me, blocking those feelings. But once I understood my feelings and were comfortable with it, and just allowing myself to feel, even if I didn't want to feel, I would just do it anyways and be like, okay, acknowledge that these emotions are there, and that's okay. I don't have to do anything about it. Just know that they're there and just feel them, feel. I always say feel it. To heal it, feel it.
Yeah. What for you?
Well, I think that I use like a lot of tools. Like I tried everything. I mean, I did tapping at one point. I did, Reiki. I got certified in that, and that was really helpful for my own healing. And then I like dove into like the Aztec and Mayan. Like I had so much healing to do with my own like Mexican heritage and culture. And so, doing those Aztec and Mayan rituals, that was really big, like with herbs and limpias and maridas and stuff like that. But also therapy. Like therapy for me was really big in doing like the work and processing stuff. But yeah, I would say right now it's probably like meditation. And then I've been like kind of pushed toward yoga lately. So I've been just starting that, but yeah.
Definitely. I think for me, I like to talk about things, so I'm very communicative, like, so I need to talk and let it out for me to understand what I'm saying, which is really weird, but like once I speak about things, I am more aware of the stories I tell myself. So I think that was huge. I told myself so many stories in the sense of like, you're always gonna be single. You're you know, just like the negative talk. So whenever I spoke about what I wanted in life or whatever it was, I listened to that a little bit more. And I'm an overthinker. I think about literally everything that can go wrong. And so interrupting those thoughts, you know, like with therapy, that's one of the things that I did, that helped me become more aware of the thoughts that I was having, the stories I was telling myself. And I actually really love to learn about all that stuff, you know, everything, about therapy, about, you know, I read a lot of books, I listen to a lot of different podcasts, because I like to relate to people too. And so I feel like, you know, kind of like what we're doing now is, you know, just talking about our situations, and hope that somebody can kind of get anything out of it. For me, that was huge, because the podcast really did that for me. Like, I was like, oh my God, this isn't just something I'm feeling, or this isn't something that I'm going through alone. There's so many people out there that have the same situations and don't know how to, you know, process things. And so that was huge for me to get like those tools. And then Reiki, of course, you know, Juana does Reiki too, and Amy, and so Juana will do like a Reiki cleanse on me anytime I feel like sluggish or unbalanced or blocked. And then I think that's just how I kind of process things too. Writing a lot,
journaling, that was big too for me.
Yeah, I did a lot of that as well. It helps, you know. And sometimes like we always like leave each other, and we know like our energy is enough to know when each other needs that space to, you know, and then we just come back together anytime we have anything that we need to know. And
but even then, like, you could be asking a question and you'll shoot us a text like, hey, what about this and this? And I'm listening to a podcast on that same topic.
Always insane.
Yeah,
always.
I'll share it on Facebook or Instagram or something, and it's like, whoa, I was literally just like thinking about this.
Isn't that weird?
So yeah, we definitely are like on the same vibes.
Yeah, like wavelengths.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I think I love that about our relationship.
I'm grateful too, like, that we have
each other, you know, to be able to go to each other when we, you know, need anything in regards, and like just to understand, just to have someone, hey, have you experienced this? Did you go through this? Are you feeling this?
And because that was a process though too, to like be open with each other, because we had a lot of like trust issues even within each other.
Healing with
each other.
Like,
because I definitely lost your guys' trust with my outbursts, and then just, you know, and I didn't go about it in, hey, I need to repair this relationship with my niece and my sister. I went about it like, you know, I'm just gonna keep healing and doing me. And you know, like my guides are like, you know, you're not gonna be understood right now, but just understand that as you heal, everyone around you heals on an energetic sense. I know like the logical mind cannot comprehend and understand that, but it's true, because when they told me that, I was like, what?
It's a law of attraction, you know?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, you can dissect it in that type of way. And it's true, because like when I did exactly, I just stayed in my own bubble. I did what I had to do for me. I put myself first. I loved myself, and I continued self-development. And then all of a sudden everyone around us, even like more of our family members, are starting to awaken and question themselves. And it's like everything's ricocheting, you know, and in such a beautiful way, you know.
I think too, it was, you know, not only like the specifics of whatever maybe we did to each other or anything, but I think in general, we just knew that to have a good, like, you know, after Abuelo passing away, it definitely brought us together. Even like a lot of families really just drift apart after passing of, you know, when that was like a huge matriarchy in our family. So after her
she
passing,
was definitely masculine energy.
Yeah, after her passing, it was kind of like we were definitely, you know, pushed together in the sense of like doing that healing and being there for each other in that sense, and, you know, healing our relationships again. And, you know, after, you know, me being gone for a while and doing my own life, and you as well, and kind of coming back together.
Yeah, it's like when they passed away, we came together.
Yeah.
And we've always been such a close-knit family anyways, but more on surface level.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we didn't want to get deep. We didn't want to, you know, like understand our trauma, you know, because we were all just in our own, you know, everything was surface level, like, hi, how are you doing, blah blah blah, and, you know, I miss you, and this and that, and nobody got deep. And now everyone's like,
we have deep conversations.
Yes.
And we have those hard conversations too of our
that
childhood.
no family wants to have.
Yeah.
But it's just beautiful though. I love it. I love that we're able to be open and we're able to say how we feel and not judge.
Yeah.
That's the huge thing, is we don't judge each other. We just talk to each other.
Yeah.
And communicate and understand that we all are going through our own process, and that's okay, you know.
Yeah. And it's taken us a while to get there though, because
A long while.
There's
Yeah.
a lot of families that do have, you know, either that one family member or that one person in your life that just their trauma they hold on to so much, and it's hard for them to let that go and to be able to reach out to them, because, you know, they're kind of still in all of those like blockages or whatever it is that they're going through. And just like how Juana said, it's just, you know, go back to yourself and focus on yourself and the healing that you need to do, so that that's how others will see that, you know, like the things that, you know, we're all in the same family. We all kind of, you know, went through things kind of similarly. And once we saw Juana healing, kind of doing that work, it was kind of like, okay, you know, like I kind of have that, you know, those issues too. Why does that trigger me when she says this? And like, and it brings us back to herself. It's not her specifically, it's the things that we carry, the stories we tell ourselves, and
we're still going through that. We'll learn from each other. Sometimes like we trigger each other at times, not in a bad way, but we understand those triggers. But it forces us to look at, okay, so why are we upset here? Like our abandonment, you know, issues or whatever, it just triggers, you know, amongst each other. And I'm like, oh, I think I need to address that a little bit more. I think I need a little more healing. I need to sit with that space, because and we're able to tell each other that, okay, I'm triggered right now by you because of this, or, you know, and it's a beautiful thing. A lot of people are like, I don't want to associate with this person because they trigger me, you know, and we use that as just like a learning tool to understand ourselves better, you know, and to dig deeper within ourselves to understand and know that it is okay, you know. We as a society, we do focus a lot on everyone else when maybe we should stop focusing on what he or she is doing and do more of, let's focus on myself and what it is that I can do for myself and heal myself, you know. why am I triggered by this person on social media saying this or that or blah, 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 or how could they say this, or, you know, and it's like, why am I feeling that way? Well, obviously it stems with something within yourself that makes you feel triggered by it. You know, you get to a point where you're like, you don't speak ill of anybody. You don't want to, because you know that everybody has their own journey and everybody's hurting and everybody's going through their own shit, you know, and you just have grace for that person, you know, and know that, you know, we just want other people to know that they're not alone, you know, they're not alone in this process. Like, we're all going through stuff, and it's okay that, and it's okay, and it'll be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And at their own time too, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it took me a while, you know, to get to where I am, and I mean, I'm 31. And you know, I'm like, oh God, I went through a lot of things that in and out, and finally I'm kind of like honing in the things that I know I am more aware of, like when I'm stressed, my anxiety comes up, or the PTSD, or whatever it is that, like, oh, but it's like everybody at their own time,
Right.
And that's why we just have to be patient, you know.
And it's never too late. It's never
Oh,
too
no.
late to start, you know, you know, we're teaching our kids and the next generation after us, like, that it's okay to feel certain kind of way. It's like, even our nieces, like, they're, you know, they're younger, and we are guiding them through their healing process. Like, we, you know, tell them that it's okay to feel. We don't ever want them to not feel a certain way. We kind of like give that example to our nieces and like our nephews, and like
The unconditional love.
Yeah.
So, like, you can make a mistake, you can fuck up or whatever it is that you're doing, but you know, just know that if you just keep working on yourself and keep going through the motions of what it is that you're feeling, and just being a role model in the sense of, you know, we're doing what we can to better ourselves, and they'll see that as well. And
yeah, you know, just heal for yourself. And
that was a big lesson that I had to learn, is that you can't force other people into their healing,
Absolutely.
into their awakening. It has to be on their own time,
yeah.
when they're ready. And you really just have to, like you said, focus on yourself.
Yeah, like I didn't even, that's why I never like poured the healing thing on you guys, because I'm like, they're gonna do it when they want to, you know, and all I can do is be a light and to pave a path, and whether people want to listen to that or not, that's okay. You know, everybody, you know, there's some days where I'm like, I don't want to listen to love and light, because I'm in a space where I just want to like be in my own darkness right now and just like whatever, you know. So I get it, you know, but I've always been a big believer, never, you can never tell anybody to heal. I've never been in that space where you should heal and you need to do this and you need to do that. Like, that's why, you know, we brought this channel about just to show people of what we experience and what we go through, you know, and that, you know, everybody has their own timing and their own process of how they want to do things, and we're just there to give you tips, essentially, of what you want to, you know, how to heal, and maybe, you know.
And even the way we process things, you know, sometimes we'll be like, oh gosh, I really need help with this, and then I'll go through my spiraling, and then it's like, okay, like, I think, you know, I can come back and be like, this is why, you know, I went down that path, and just come back
recenter.
and,
yeah, it's so important to, you know,
Connect with yourself.
Any questions, I guess, you can put in the comments.
Yeah, for sure. If you guys have any questions, just
So,
and you can. We're so open with that. So
That was our first episode.
we appreciate you coming to listen to our stories. You know, that wasn't easy, but
We hope you got something out of it.
yeah,
definitely. And, you know, we'll continue to be talking about things like, you know, the tools that we used in other episodes too. And, you know,
And if you have any ideas, you can definitely put those in the comments.
Yeah, definitely.
What you'd like to hear more of.
Yeah. And how we integrate them in our lives and stuff. So
Definitely. Well, thank you. Bye.